Hey everybody, it's David Pingree with Vital MX. We've got another race shop build today. This one is a KTM 350 SXF 2020 model. Great motorcycle, really fun. Very popular with vet riders and those who are not doing a lot of competing but just like to ride, looking for something in between a 250 and a 450, and this is the machine. Some great companies involved with this build. Cherbys Plastic gave us the Flow orange stuff. Love the way this looks, especially when you complement it with like a matte, darker color like this. Decal Works made our graphics. Did a great job. We got Mika Metals, came on board for chain sprocket bars. Works connection with a lot of the orange anodized parts, axle blocks, all those things. These even have my number etched into them, which is pretty neat. We went with the stock wheels. Great wheels on these motorcycles. Look cool, so not a lot of reason to change them. Full Hinson clutch. We got factory chassis parts, engine mounts, front and rear, and the rear are aluminum. The front is titanium, which is that really cool rainbow looking color. And it does two things up front there, the intent of it anyway. It's thicker than the standard one all the way through. And the titanium, it's a stronger, more rigid material. So it gives you a more rigid front feel. If you ever look at the factory race bikes, KTM and Husky, they've got a big metal plate welded between the two spars. That's in effect doing the same thing, just creating more rigidity in the front of that to give you a more planted front end feel. Full Yoshimura exhaust on this thing, Moto seat cover, and we just left the stock ODI grips because they work great, look great. We also got JBI suspension. This is a buddy of ours here in Temecula, Murrieta area. Been doing suspension for quite a while, but it's sort of just gaining some popularity here. And it's the first time he's been on one of our builds, so it was fun to work with him today on that. And then we've got Jamie here from Twisted Development. He was obviously a huge part of this build, as you can tell from the graphics. Jamie went through and we were trying to make this thing better than a 450. Horsepower numbers, rideability, just all the way around. And that was what we asked him to do. Jamie, talk us through all the things that went into this motor.
So the KTM 350 in stock trim is kind of one of the, as we talked earlier, you ride the thing and it's like, oh, you think it's a 350, it should be a little bit more. But however, whenever you get into it, there's a lot of really good parts inside of it. We use a lot of OEM pieces in this thing, like KTM owns CP pistons, or owners group of KTM owns them. So it's a really nice piston, it's something like you'd buy aftermarket. So we chose to leave the stock piston in all of our 350 builds. We kind of go that route. So that was one thing there. We kind of changed the gaskets around. We work with Cometic gaskets to make our own thickness of gaskets so we can move the compression either up or down. And sometimes we're achieving, moving cam timing or moving whatever because the stock KTM cams aren't movable. But in this particular build, we kind of decked the head, cleaned up the cylinder head, ported it. We have another air boot that we like to use as a longer Venturi. Costs about $80. It's worth about a foot-pound of torque, which in this machine, that's what most guys are looking for, So
that's the one thing, like when you were talking about, when you get on these in stock trim, sometimes you can be a little bit underwhelmed, and it's that torque. You kind of expect it to be more like a 450, and it comes out of turns more like a 250. And although it makes great power as the RPMs come up, that's where that air boot comes in.
Yeah, and at about 9,500 RPM on the dyno, the 450 signed off. They meet power. This thing meets power with it at about 54 horse, So the 450's declining way rapidly. It goes to about 12 grand, where this thing's just getting started. It passes stock 450 power and just kind of keeps yarding all the way to the limiter another, almost 4,000 RPM. The vet guys love this thing because you can ride it pretty hard, pretty aggressively on the throttle. The throttle's not very sensitive, so it's not herky-jerky. It doesn't wear you out, but then you still have plenty of power. And riding this thing today, you know, I haven't got to ride one of our 350s, so it was pretty awesome to just feel like the aggressiveness, you know, that I never knew was there out of a 350. It's just, you kind of get the clutch and it like comes alive and goes. So it's definitely a cool machine. But with that being said, you know, we use VP fuel for the build. We tuned both the stock ECU and the Vortex ECU. A lot of customers don't really want to spend the money to step up on the hardware cost of the Vortex, which is $699, and then the mapping above that is another $250. So for this bike, we did tune both, and that was a pretty cool deal to kind of see that after they're tuned really well, you know, they're pretty comparable. But the KTM 350 in stock trim, what we could get to with the stock ECU was pretty cool. So I think you could attest, maybe talk a little bit about what you felt of the two ECUs today.
Like I said, typically on a stock 350, you can't ride it like a 250 and you can't ride it like a 450. And it's somewhere right in the middle there, and you have to figure out that level of aggression that you need to ride it with. One thing that I liked about this, and we actually had Cole Seeley out here and he jumped on it and rode it and loved it. And his comment was, you know, I felt like it would still pull. If I left it in a gear tall, it would still pull it. And that was the exact thing we were impressed with, is that you get that torque back that you always feel is lacking on these. And I could leave it in third gear pretty much around the whole track because the thing revs so far. And when you looked at the dyno chart, which we'll try to post on here as well, it's more power all the way up the front side, and then it actually eclipses where the 450 peaks and just keeps going. So it does make a taller horsepower number than the stock 450. Obviously not quite the torque up the front side, but not too damn far off. Very, very, very impressive. So coupled with the Yoshimura exhausts and all of the things that Jamie did, this thing is an animal. The thing for me though is it's still more manageable than a 450. A 450, just because it's got more rotating mass, feels heavier. Compare this to a 2020 450 KTM. This is heavier on a scale, but it feels lighter. You snap that clutch, man, and it jumps. It's really, really fun that way. But I love that the power, where it kind of lacked some torque and pull down low, that's corrected now. And you get all of that better front side and the over rev that it had, which is even improved. I mean, it's just a really fun broad power now. So that was obviously the big part of this build, was trying to get the horsepower the way we have it. And we succeeded, thanks to you. So thanks a lot for that. A couple other people I want to mention, Dunlop tires, and this is the perfect combo to me, the MX-33 rear with the MX-53 front. I'm telling you, that is the go-to tire. I love it. Just super stoked on that.
One of the things I'd like to bring up and add, I mean, we're engine builders, you know, we specify in performance, but these Works Connection axle blocks we sell a ton of at the shop. Kind of the design of the KTM OEM, where that axle is threaded into the left block, and then when you tighten it down, it locks to that side of the subframe. So every Japanese bike is going to come with a system like this, and I actually thought I noticed quite a bit today, as well as testing in the past, that the axle blocks are a good attribute to kind of freeing up the chassis some too. So
I will say, in terms of chassis, because when I jumped on this thing today, it had the JBI suspension, the FCP engine mounts, obviously the Works Connection blocks in the back, and we did a few tweaks. It went a little bit stiffer on the fork, and we actually just adjusted some of the preload on the shock to get it to settle a little bit more for me. And I was really, really impressed. JB came out and was kind of watching and asking me questions and helping me fine tune it, and we got this thing working great. And it was a little slick and dry today, lots of chop, a couple of really heavy G-outs where if it was too soft and it was gonna blow through, it would have blown through. This was the first time I'd ever used these guys, and I tell you, I was really impressed. He walked me through what he did. He's got kits where he can actually send you the stack all valved, and you can install it yourself into this fork. But he was telling me he's just got hundreds and hundreds of hours into this WP Air fork, trying to get it to perform as well as the Showa and KYB spring forks. And man, I really appreciated his commitment to that. And I can tell you, it was fantastic today. But leaving here today, he said, what else can we do? And I said, man, I'm happy. I have zero complaints. Anyway, thank you for your work on this thing. You rode it. What's your impression? I mean,
this thing, the attributes of how easy it is to ride for a guy that's just getting into the sport and just learning to jump and whatever, you don't have to be so precise. You kind of point it in that direction, give it the gas, and it goes over it. It's just a lot easier to ride. I see why 4-strokes are what they are.
And I've gone away this year from really riding a lot of 450s. I said, you know what, I'm going to stick to the smaller bikes because I don't ride it as much, and so I'm getting arm pump, and I can't ride a 450 as long as I'd like to. My arms are giving out before I'm able to even get my heart rate up. So I did find today on this, I could keep going, and I was getting generally fatigued before I had any kind of arm pump issue or anything else. So just I don't know if it's that lighter feel, if it's a smoother power, but I could ride this thing longer than I could a 450. So for me, that's what I'm looking for. And so
and we made a already great bike even better. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Good to do.
We sure did. Well, thank you so much for your help. I know you got a lot of hours into this, and we sure appreciate it. And the results are there. Check out all the companies that were involved in this build. Each and every one of them make amazing products, and we're stoked to have them and showcase them on this build. Thank you guys for watching. We got lots more coming, so stay tuned for more race shop builds. See you on the next one.